All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm here. My name is Kevin. I'm here with Barbara, and today we're going to be introducing you to the latest Novedge webinar series episode. Welcome again. Today we are partnering with Maia Merav Holtzman to demonstrate key techniques for successful jewelry modeling with Rhino V5. Listen, watch, and learn as Maia covers the step-by-step creation of a model for rapid prototyping and casting using precision modeling techniques to accurately follow a two-dimensional spec sheet for 3D production. For those of you who don't know, Maia runs a series of intensive Rhino 3D workshops at Design Rhino, her McNeel Associates authorized training center in Los Angeles, California. A jewelry and industrial designer, Maia employs Rhino modeling techniques to supplement handcraft in her line of limited edition jewelry and works in the luxury goods industry as a freelance modeler. Maia holds a degree in jewelry making and design from the Fashion Institute of Technology, a BA from Columbia University, and an extremely underutilized JD from Tulane Law School. Today's presentation is about 40 minutes long, and afterwards we'll have a brief Q&A where Maia will answer your questions live. Submit your questions to us at any time in the chat window below. But before we get going with today's presentation, here's an overview of what we do at Novedge. The Novedge webinar series is brought to you by Novedge.com. As one of the largest online design software stores, we offer a huge assortment of software solutions that cater to virtually every designer's need. To pick up a copy of Rhino 5 and see our complete catalog of third-party plugins, you are welcome to call and speak with our specialist, Bob there. You can reach him by his email address, bob@novedge.com. And Barbara, I think there are a number of things that we want to encourage our attendees today to check out as well. Barbara?
Sure. As there are quite a number of jewelry designers out there who use Rhinoceros, I'd like to invite you to visit Novedge's online community for Rhino users, designers, and professionals. It's rhinojungle.novedge.com. Write that down and join us as we share and discuss the latest Rhino news, video tips, and events. For more information, please visit Rhino Jungle today. And to stay up to date with the latest product promos and Novedge webinars, please like us on Facebook. It's fun and easy.
All right, thank you, Barbara. Coming up next week, Evolve enables Sundog Creative Director Michael Herc to move from an initial sketch, explore styling alternatives, and to visualize new products with realistic renderings before ever exporting the digital models required by others in the product development process. As guest presenter, Michael will demo a typical workflow with Solid Thinking Evolve, a key tool in their design process. To sign up for this webinar, head on over to novedge.com/webinar/96. No commas. And last but not least, today's webinar is being recorded live. If you want to rewatch episode 95 in its entirety, as always, you can find it on our Novedge webinar series channel through Vimeo and YouTube. And with that said, Maia, are you ready?
Yes, I am.
Cool. All right, so I will transition to you right about now. Here we are. All right, everyone, enjoy.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. So this is me and my website. Just starting out here while I go over a little bit about why I'm doing this and what I hope you guys take away from this webinar. I graduated from FIT in 2000, and I had a tiny bit of Rhino when I graduated. It was just in the first version or the second version at that time. And I went to work for Bulgari for a year in their repairs department. And as a result of that 1 year, which was the time that I stayed there, I was able to look inside some of the most beautiful, incredibly built jewelry in the world, rather than just seeing it from the outside. And one of the things that I notice often happens with my students is that they make things that look really good externally, but that they don't hold up in terms of the engineering. So my goal is to try to help people understand what it means to engineer a piece of jewelry, not just design it. I think it's really important for designers to understand how to engineer, even if they're not building the pieces themselves, because you have to hand it off to somebody, a craftsperson, who's going to actually make the piece. And if it's not realistic, it causes a big problem in the whole process and the workflow of building jewelry. And I know that a lot of the the feedback that I get from people just getting out of design school is that they always are designing things that are incredibly beautiful and not makeable. So this webinar is going to get into a little bit of how to actually make stuff. I am opening up my Rhino screen here. I'm just going to go into my default 4 views here. And the first thing that I do whenever I sit down to start making a piece of jewelry is I get my caliper out. I know that sounds funny because it's, you know, it's a digital format, but I mean, my caliper is also digital, but I really work a lot with thinking about dimensions from a practical standpoint. So I measure, I reference pieces I've already made. I'm constantly thinking about what those measurements are actually going to mean in real life. And the caliper that I use that a lot of people are always asking me about, it's called a Mitutoyo caliper. It's a digital caliper. It's absolutely beautiful, precision piece of equipment. And I recommend that if you are seriously considering making jewelry in Rhino, you buy one of these that you have on hand all the time to work with. So the first thing that I'm going to do right now when I start building an object is I'm going to go into a file that I have already set up, which is my helpful modeling tools for jewelry file. And I have in my file here a bunch of different things that I can import into my new file. So in this case, I have all of the sized rings already set up. I can just go ahead and choose a 6.5 sized ring, and with the Control C, I can copy it to clipboard, and I can go ahead and bring it into my other file. See that I'm just clicking here and I have both of these available to me. And in my front view, I can just Control V to paste, basically. You'll see that if I just go zoom extents, I have my ring set up in my 4 views here. And just turning on my grid there. The first thing I'm going to do with this 6.5 size ring is I'm going to move it from center to 0. So I'm going to select my object, and I'm going to find my center O-snap, and then I'm just going to type in 0, and that's going to move my profile curve for my inside of my ring shank to 0, which is the origin of my C-plane. And I always try to work around 0. A lot of what we do in jewelry is really symmetrical on both sides, and I like to think that we have the ability to sort of make half of everything rather than having to make an entire piece of our object. Although I have a tendency to want to see the entire pieces I'm working, so I often do work in the full round. But I like to be able to just mirror things across really quickly. So always try to start working around 0, which is the origin of your instruction plane. And the other thing that I'm going to do for this particular project that I'm about to start working on is I'm going to first get back into my 4 default views, which is this little window pane, right-click here. And then I'm just going to go back into my helpful modeling tools file, and I'm going to grab a stone. So I have my stone layer. I'm going to turn that on, and make it current, and turn off my ring sizes. And then let's just go into my perspective view. If we look at this in our rendered mode, you'll see that I already have materials applied to these objects. These are a bunch of different bezels that are possible to pull out. In this case, I'm not going to grab one, at least not just yet. But I am going to grab this single stone, and I'm going to, again, Control-C, copy to clipboard, and then Control-V, paste into my other file. For those of you who are wondering how I have 2 Rhino files open, I'll just let you know that if you minimize your initial file, you can then open up a new file. You can never Control-O open up a new file, or Control-N open up a new file. Rhino will close the original file down. But if you do want to have two open at the same time, all you need to do is minimize and then open. So I can just minimize those down and then grab a new file from my desktop or start a new template in Rhino 5, and that's how that will work. So again, with my stone, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just center this around 0 as well. The easiest way to do that, and a way for me to keep the ability to move this stone around, because it's got so many facets, there's no actual center. I can find the area centroid of the object, but if I'd like to find the center of my girdle here, I'm just going to do a circle, 2 points. The start of my diameter, I'm just going to have my mid O-snap on here. I'm going to go to the mid of one of these little faceted edges, and then I'll just drag this around and go to the mid of the other side. And you'll see that I've created a circle around what is not actually circular, because this is really a faceted object. But that circle allows me to work as though the stone is circular. So I'm going to then also move this up to this top point here. So M for the move command, and then move from mid to end. Let me turn on my end O-snap. Then I'll just go ahead and select both of those objects and group them together, so that when I select them, they will be both chosen at the same time, as you can see. Now I can move my stone from center to 0, and I know that I've actually placed that stone directly on the center. I'll go into my top view for 1 second. You can see that it's really lined up with my axes on the top construction plane. And then I'll just go ahead and in the front view, I can move this stone with ortho up somewhere around there for now. It's not a definitive placement, but just because we know that I know that for this design I want my stone centered. And then I'll go ahead, you see that the layer that was imported is called stone, so if I go ahead and turn that off, the stone will just go away for a little while, and then I can go ahead and select that curve, which is grouped with the object but on a different layer. I'll change my curve using the change. I right-clicked over my stones layer. I'm going to go to Change Object Layer. I'm just going to change that. And so now that curve is also hidden with the stone. Okay. So when I'm working in Rhino on an actual freelance job where somebody has given me an image, hopefully it's dimensioned, often it's dimensioned improperly or kind of dimensioned, the first thing that I always do is I import that image into my Rhino viewports. So I'll go ahead and do the picture frame command. It's also in your surfacing menu right here, this little multicolored screen, picture frame. The other thing that you can do is you can actually drag and drop files, JPEGs, into the individual viewports. But just for the sake of this exercise, let's go ahead and do the picture frame command. And this takes me to my desktop. And I have an image here called top, which I've already set up. I'm going to double click there. And then in my top view, I'll start in the lower left-hand corner and drag out what is just actually a simple planar surface, and left click to set that down in space. And you'll see that I've just dragged in an image that is the top down view, the plan view of the ring that I'm going to be making, or sort of making. I'm going to be making something slightly different, but I'm just showing you guys a bit about how to dimension your images if you're working directly from one. So I'll do that in the top and the front view as well. Right-click to re-engage my command, picture frame, front, and then just zoom out a little. These don't have to be exact at the moment because we're going to scale them to make them fit exactly. And then I'll do the same thing in my right view. Okay. Right-click to re-engage, right image, hold shift down for ortho so that you get that nice straight line at the bottom there, and then just drop your image in. Okay? And I'm going to go ahead and select all of these, and I'll make a new layer, and I'll call it picture frames. And I will right-click over that layer and say change object layer, so that now all of my picture frames are on that layer. And then what I'll do is I'll select all using that layer, select objects, and I'll go into my properties menu, which is one of my tabbed panels on the right here under properties. I'll select material, and you'll see that I get this picture frame, which is the name of the material basically. And as I start to drag my transparency slider up, I can make these images more transparent so I can see my construction plane behind them, which is really useful. Once I've got my transparency up to about 60 something, depending on the image, you'll have a different setting. I can go ahead and go back into my layers. So the first image that we're going to work on in terms of dimensioning is our front. You can see that the actual ring size is already here. And what I want to do is I want to key in my image to the ring size. That's the easiest way to get a really good sense of what it is that we're creating. So I'm going to go ahead and scale this 2D, just sort of eyeing it out. And the way that I can do that is by turning my gumball on and dragging one of these handles, either the green or the red, towards, well, let's not scale the wrong thing. Let's scale the picture frame towards the image with the shift key down so that it goes in an equal scale. If I don't hold shift down, you'll see that I'm just scaling in 1D. So I want to hold shift to make sure that I get a 2D scale. I'm going to eye it out first, and I'm going to just use my nudge keys to move my picture frame around until I get something that I'm basically happy with. And I can adjust. Remember that you can always adjust a little bit more if you feel as though it's not quite right. Once I have it set down like this, the first thing that I'll do is I'm going to trim away the excess. So this picture frame is just a planar surface. So I can treat it as a planar surface. I can use my near O snap to slide along the edge somewhere. I can snap to near using my rectangle corner to corner. And it doesn't even have to be perfectly centered, but because I'm OCD, I like it to be. So more or less, let's move it over a tiny bit more, and then I'll just go ahead and engage my trim command and get rid of the excess on the outside, and then I'll lock this. No, not that. So I'll lock my picture frame. That way I can no longer move it around at all. Then I'll go ahead and in the top view, I'll go ahead and start scaling this piece down using the first scaled image as a reference point. So again, let's just start working on it. Basically, we're working on this without exact dimensioning, which makes it a little bit both easier and harder, I would say. I'm going to, because I need to find the center of this object, I'm going to actually add a circle by diameter. So circle, 2 points, start of diameter. I'll just put my cursor somewhere here, and then very carefully with ortho engaged, I'll drag out my circle until I find what I think is the exterior of that stone. If I know the exact size of the stone, that also helps. I can put a circle down, and then I can scale to that as well. So now I'm going to orient these two first to 0. So I'm going to move from center of the circle to 0. That just places this, because we can't rely on our picture frame to be centered exactly. I can't use my mid O-snap. I'm not sure that these are going to be equidistant on either side. So this is going to orient me based on that circle. And then I can go ahead and just see if my edges are intersecting. I mean, they basically are. For the sake of this, because I'm not completely using this for the demo, I would say that it's slightly something like that. Then again, top view, rectangle. We're going to do corner to corner again, so let's have our near O-snap on. And then using that rectangle, I can do the trim command, get rid of my excess, enter, and then select and lock. So I've now set up these two intersecting images. And this is great just in the sense of understanding the seaplane functionality. So we see why we need to work on different seaplanes, is that we have different views that relate to the seaplanes in terms of being parallel to them. So finally, in our right view, I'm just going to hit my right tab here, viewport tab. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to just move this around a bit. I can go ahead and, using my nudge keys, move that up. I see that this is the interior of my circle, and this is the interior of my circle that makes up my inner ring shank. So if I go ahead and do a line from midsection, or both sides, from the quad point of the circle at the top, and I just drag that out, I know that this needs to be there. Okay? And then I can kind of get a sense that now I see that this really isn't large enough. So I'm going to go ahead and scale until I think that I've got it more or less right, just looking at this. So let's say something along the lines of this. It's not quite perfect, but for the sake of the work that we're doing today, it will suffice. And you can really get this perfect just by keying into specific measurements that you are aware of. So again, rectangle. Let's trim away the excess using that rectangle. And then I'm going to select curves, SCL-CRV, and I don't need any of those curves anymore, so I'll delete them. I don't want to have to be bothered with them. And everything can be locked. So now I have this grouping of images that I can start to work from. I think I actually just deleted my ring size, so I'm going to undo that. And I did. Okay, SCL CRV for select curves, and then I'm going to deselect using Control and left click that inner ring size, and then delete my curves. So I have the original ring size that I do want to keep. And now, for the time being, while I work on this, I'm going to start working in the right view. So zoom extends. I've already created my curves, and this thing goes so fast. So I'm going to bring my curves in with my construction lines layer. You can see that they're slightly different than the curves that are in these picture frames. So I'm going to turn the picture frames off, I'm going to start working on this object as though there were no picture frames. So what we have here, I'll just hide these two for a second, is what basically is the original setup for building a ring. I'm going to create a single line which defines the height of the base of the ring shank. I'm going to then create another single line that intersects that line that defines the width of the ring shank. So in this case, I have a single line, the length of which is 6.4 millimeters. Why 6.4? Well, it's going to be a big ring, but the 0.4 millimeters is to account for polishing, final polishing. We lose about 0.2 millimeters of material during final polishing of a material like 18 karat gold. And we always have to think about what's going to happen to our models before we even start to build them in terms of how the post-printing processing will affect this object. So there are two concepts. One is the concept of material loss, which is what happens in the polishing process. The other concept is the concept of shrinkage, which happens in the casting process if we're doing multiple waxes from a mold. In both cases, we are going to want to think about how we build our object before we start building it in order to account for those. And the issue with shrinkage we can deal with at the end of our model making, while the issue of material loss we can't. So right now I'm going to create my original curve. The way that I built the profile curve for this object is to create two straight lines, 1 millimeter and some each, and then an arc. So I do the arc command and then end, end, and end using that single line object there. Delete one of those. And then I just use Control-J to join these three individual segments together. And I had my stone in place. Let me bring my stone in from my original model. My stone in place here, this is the actual size of the stone that I'm using. And so I built my curve, the other top profile curve of this object based on that stone. Then, as you can see, I created a curve here using my curve command or control point curve. And the way that you do that is you just snap to the end here and you start moving out in space. So let's just turn off you can hold the Alt key down to turn off control points. And then at the end I do want my O-snaps. You can hold Alt down to turn off O-snaps, and then you can let it go at the end to snap to that curve there. What happens with a curve like this is that then once I've created it, I can turn my control points on using F10 or the points on command, and I can start adjusting the curve using nudging. Okay. So I can get this curve basically to follow the curvature of, if, for example, my picture frame has a specific curvature, I can actually build that into my image. Okay. And once I have my curve set up the way I'd like it to be set up, I'll just turn those control points off with F11, and I'm going to select last. That's SEL last. And I'll do something called the fair command. Fair is going to just sort of give this curve a nice smoothing of its curvature with a tolerance. In this case, I have it set to 1 millimeter. You see that it just adjusts it slightly. It sets it up to be a better curve for working to build objects with. So if you have a curve that's a little bit wonky, you can always fair it and make it a little bit nicer. And then I have my center inner ring shank curve, and I have this external shape that defines the outside of my ring from the right side. And I'll go ahead and do a command called curve from two views, which is CRV2 view. Rhino prompts me to select my first curve. I'll select the red, and then to select the second curve, I'll select this curve here. And you'll see that basically Rhino's created the external portion of my ring shank here using the curvature of that curve to flow this center curve along. And this is great because you can see that the top portion of these two is still lined up, even though this now has curvature to it. It's not planar. And then I'll go ahead and I'll do the mirror command. I have mirror in my aliases already set up, but if you want to, you can find the mirror command in your transforms cascading menu here. It's the command I use probably the most of all the commands. And then in this case, we can just mirror across the y-axis. So I'll type in y, and you'll see that I have those two edges of my ring now. And the first thing that I'll do at this point is I'll just take a look and make sure that I'm happy with all of these curves. Now I'll go ahead and change my current layer to ring body, and I'll do a sweep to command. So sweep to, select the first rail. Always select these on the same side, or you can sometimes get a weird result. I'm going to select this in the back, and I'll select this in the back as well. And then for my cross-section curves, I'll choose this group here and this group here and hit enter. And you can see that it's used that cross-section to reference and this cross-section to reference. I'm going to select closed sweep, preview, and you'll see that now it's gone all the way around. So for somebody like me that likes to see the entire piece and not work in the half, this is I choose to do closed sweep. I'm going to turn maintain height off for this. You see that maintain height keeps, attempts anyway, in this case we have two different heights, so it can't completely maintain the height, but it attempts to find a middle ground between these two sizes as opposed to doing a gradual tapering down towards the smaller size. So I'm going to keep closed sweep on, maintain height off, and say OK. And I'm just going to change my color of that layer to green. Not that one, though. And there you go. And then I'm going to do another sweep to rails using this small curve that I've created here. It's another arc. I just eyed this arc out when I built it. So I snapped from quad to quad using my quad O snap, and then just pulled up with ortho engaged a little bit to create this rounded characteristic. It just gives a, you know, they call it like the comfort fit ring thing. I don't know that that's the nicest imagery in the world, but it is very nice to have a not completely flat interior to your ring, even just in terms of wearing the ring. So I'll go ahead and do another sweep too. Sorry. I'm going to choose my polysurface edges rather than the curves, just because sometimes the curves get messed up. The edges will always maintain tangency with that sweep. Then I'm going to choose that as my cross-section, press enter, and in this case I do want to maintain height, so I'm going to say maintain height, and close sweep, OK. And you'll see that I've just created the beginning of a ring. Okay. Now I'm going to select these, and I'll hide them for a sec while I make another interior portion of my ring. So I'm going to do the sweep to rails again, 1 and 2. Select my cross-section curves. This one is the only one I'm going to select now. Hit enter and maintain height. So you see that this is keeping the height of the original profile curve, even though it gets larger. And this is going to be the interior of my ring. I'll say OK. And then again, I'll do this sweep using the edges of my poly surface. and using this arc. And I can say maintain height again. Okay. Close sweep. Okay. So this is going to eventually function as the inside of my ring shank. So what I like to do at this point, I'm just right-clicking here to show objects, is just to take a look at my object. And in Rhino we have this really nice tool for jewelers, which is called the EMAP. I'm going to right-click on my display modes and go to rendered viewport. I'll right-click there also to change all of my viewports to rendered. And now I'll go ahead and just to look at the curvature of my object to make sure I'm happy with its shape, I'll go ahead and select all, so SELALL or Control A, either one, deselect my stone, and type in EMAP. And you see that we've applied a metallic finish to the surfaces, which has a reflective quality and a light source. This is a really excellent tool for just checking to see if you're happy with what you've built so far. And assuming that you're happy with what you've built so far, what I always do at this juncture, so as not to lose all this information if Rhino crashes, is that I'll do this Control A to all, and I'll hover over my layer called Copy, right-click, and click on Copy Objects to Layer. And then I will save. Okay. Now if something happens, if I create too many surfaces and my file gets really heavy and my Rhino crashes, I can always find this again on my desktop and it will not be in any way damaged. Sometimes the files when they crash, although I haven't had it happen to me in Rhino 5 yet, but sometimes the files when they crash do get damaged. And then you hate yourself because you have to go back and start from scratch. So I'm going to turn off my EMAP. You get this little pop-up window. I just click out and it goes away, and I'll go back to my ghosted display mode. And the next thing I want to do here is I'm going to start applying stars to my surface. Now, a lot of you guys know about the project command, project curves. I generally find that that's really good if you're projecting in a parallel to your C-plane, your construction plane, and if you don't have too much curvature. But when you have a lot of curvature, like a ring like this, there is another way to do the application of motifs to the object that is a little bit less skewed. So if I do, let's say I want to build a bunch of stars. So I go to my polygon cascading menu, star. I'm in my right view. Let's go into right. And then let's say I do the center of the star somewhere here, shift for ortho. I'm not going to allow, and I'm going to shift and alt so that I don't have O snaps, so I can make this planar. But if I do something like that, and then okay. So I'm going to just go ahead and go here. Now if I say project, and I select my surface here, see how it starts to skew? This to me can be a really pretty motif. In this case it looks really nice. But if it's not what you want, it can be extremely frustrating. So how do you avoid that? And you know, it's really late. So what I do in this case is I do the extract surface command, extract SRF, and make sure that copy is toggled to yes. I'm going to extract this top surface here from the poly surface. I'm just grabbing that surface and hit enter. And then I'm just going to go ahead and hide the interior surface. And those. I know why, because I have my copy on. Okay. Then I have this extracted surface, which doesn't have these additional side surfaces anymore, so it's not a poly surface. And I'm going to do something in the top view called the smash command. Enter to continue. I've selected my curves and hit again. And what I've done here now is I've created a flattened surface which basically keeps the UV dimensions of the original surface and some of the shape of it. I'm going to just go into my top view, zoom out a little bit, and for comfort I'll rotate this 90 degrees and I'll drag it down a little bit with my gumball so that I can see what I'm working on. And I'm going to turn off my stones layer so I don't have to look at those right now. I'll turn off my gumball. And what I'll do at this point is, let's assume that I'm going to do, first I want to find out where the center of this object is, because I want to place some objects in a polar array around the center top stone. So I'll find my area centroid by doing the Analyze Mask Properties Area Centroid command, selecting that surface. And you see that Rhino places a point object right there at the center of this surface. Once I have that done, somebody is knocking on my door. That's bizarre. Once I have this done, I'll do a circle from center. Center of the circle is going to be point. And then I know that the diameter of my stone is about 10.5, so I'll just click 10.5. Then I will do a star object. Center of star, I'm going to make the quad. And I'll go ahead and use the edge of this surface, the intersection point, with Shift for ortho depressed. Click once, and then start to drag in until I get a shape that I like. Don't make it too sharp. And then click again to set that down. Okay. I'm going to change these curves to a different color so it's easier to see. And I'll start working in my star curves layer. And now I'll just do the array polar command. Center of my polar array is going to be this point, and then number of items will be 4. Angle to fill or first reference point, 360 is the default. If you just accept that by hitting enter, that's fine. If you don't want to go all the way around, change that. But otherwise, the general default in Rhino is going to go to 360. Enter again. This is my preview. The preview image is in pink. If I like it, I'll say enter, and that's great. I'm actually going to do one thing, though, here, which is that I'm going to do the same command, point. I'm going to turn on record history now. Number of items 4, 360, enter. And then I can just go ahead and scale this down a little bit because I think that these are too big. So I'm going to do my scale 2D command. My origin point is going to be the end here. My first reference point will be the other end, and I'll just start dragging this down. I can hit Alt to make sure that I'm not snapping to anything. And you see that now my stars update with the original parent star. So as long as I don't move any of those, I can change the way that they're displayed pretty easily. So now I'm going to go ahead and make some copies of these objects. Just anywhere. We are so short on time that I'm not going to be able to do as much of this demo as I would have liked to. So I have a bunch of these star curves or polylines which are set out now. The first thing that I'm going to do is I want to apply them to my surface. And rather than applying them rounded, which is going to deform them, I'm going to apply these rigidly and use them as cutters to get some really nice, sharp, and as close as possible to the original shape surfaces that I can offset. So I'm going to just use my filter here, just checking to make sure everything is well. Yeah, we're close to the 40 minutes mark. I'm just going to show this one last thing, and then I'll go ahead and start answering questions. I'm going to go ahead and grab my curves, right-click here, Window Select, and then right-click again to bring back this is my filter tool. You can find that down here to pop up that you can dock. I'm going to do the Flow Along Surface command, and I'm going to use record history on this as well. For my base surface, I'm going to select this corner. I'm going to make sure that these flow rigidly, and I'm going to click on this corner as well. And you see that what I have here now is a bunch of stars that are not adhering, they're sticking out, they're not adhering to my surface. And what I can start to do at this point is I can start to adjust them before I do the trim command by moving these around. So if I select that and I want to scale it, for example, just look at this as we do it, you'll see that as I start scaling in, that star scales in. Okay? And the same thing for this one. But I notice that it's huge and it's intersecting with another object. I can go ahead and scale in, and it scales in. Once I've done this, I can use my trim command, and I can get some really great shapes. So I'm going to start wrapping up right now because I know that everybody is wanting to go, and unfortunately we're going to just miss some of the finishing of this object. But I want to talk a little bit about STL production and stuff like that, so I'll do that in the question and answer session. But for trimming, I would make as many surfaces, these extracted surfaces. I would basically do the copy and place command, which is the right click, and I would go ahead and trim this surface over and over and over again to create these really beautiful individual surfaces. You can see here that this, surface, hello, there we go. That surface now can be offset, so if I go into my right view again, I can do the offset surface command. I'm going to say distance 0.75, both sides, yes, enter. And you see that I have a non-distorted star rather than one of those ones that gets all long. So I'm going to go ahead and go into the question and answer session, and apologize to you guys because I have so much material to cover here and not enough time to do it, unfortunately. But maybe I'll try to do a little recording of the final steps to finish preparing this ring for production. So I guess you can go ahead, Kevin, and take over.
Oh, well, I just want to say that, Maya, you are listed as an organizer, so if you want to record a little bit too as well,
Okay.
the file could go straight to your computer, so if you want to carry on after the main demo. But okay, what's a good question that you've seen so far, Maya, that you'd like to answer?
I haven't seen any of the questions because I had to keep, you can see, do I have the distortion here on my screen again now?
Let me see. No, but you could try it.
No?
There we go.
Okay.
Yeah, just a bit.
Well, that's good.
Off on the side, though, yeah.
It is off on the side. All right, so I'm just going to open up the questions and see what people have been asking because I haven't had a chance to look at any of them.
I guess we can start from the top.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, okay, cool. I'll let you start off.
Well, Kevin, do you have some that you've already?
Yes, so during the presentation, let's see. George has a question right here. In RCAM, you can select a closed vector such as a circle and turn it into a dome or a cone with a specified height. In Rhino, you have to craft a sweep or loft, which is time intensive. Is there a better way?
Well, one of the really easy things that you could do is you could create a solid object and split it in half. So if you have, if you have it like, for example, a sphere or any of the solids really, an ellipsoid or whatever, if you dimension it out properly, so let's just say we knew that those were our proper dimensions, then I could do a couple of things. Let me just, I have this big question thing here, so let me make that smaller. Let me turn off my file here if I can. So in the front view, if you've got something like this, all you need to do is make a single line segment across it. If you know that it's, for example, from the center directly, you can make it from center generally on both sides. And then all I need to do is make a wire cut. Something like that. So if you know the dimensions, exactly the height and the ellipsoidal dimensions of the base of your conic shape, you can just do that. It's pretty easy.
Okay, let's see. I have one from Annie. Let me try to find this one. There's a lot of questions here, but Annie wants to know, are the ring sizes in your file increased by a particular percentage for shrinking that takes place after casting?
No. For scaling, for shrinking, I do the whole object at the end. So the scale 3D command, which is just known as scale if you type it in, I can scale from center. And for my scale factor, or first reference point, assuming that the shrinkage is going to be somewhere between 3 and 5%, I'll just scale up. So 1.05 would be a 5% increase in overall size. And for me, that's really useful for just doing the whole object at the scale.
Okay, so I have another one right here. It's what are the nudge keys? When I use the arrow keys, the viewport rotates.
Okay, so if you go to your Tools, Options, and then you go to Modeling Aids right here and you open that up, you'll see this nudge. If you change your nudge keys from Alt plus arrow keys to just arrow keys, you'll be able to just use your arrow keys to move your object around or to move control points around. If you want to use your nudge keys in the default, just hold down the Alt key and use your arrow keys to nudge.
Cool. Eric wants to know, is there a shortcut being used to turn the picture frame layer on or off?
A shortcut to turn the picture frame on and off?
Mm-hmm.
I just turn it on by clicking on the light bulb.
Mm.
There may be a shorter cut. People always know stuff that I don't, but this is the shortest cut that I know.
Okay. Sil wants to know if Rhino is parametric, like SolidWorks, 3D Design, or Cryo.
It is not parametric. It's NURBS-based, but we have a parametric plugin called Grasshopper.
Cool. Joshua, so let's see. Seeing the smash surface / layout / flow along surface workflow was neat, but why not just slop the star shape to avoid the distortion from projecting? This is at 1150.
The reason that I wanted to demonstrate this, and I didn't get a chance to do it, but the reason I wouldn't do a slop here is because I want to be able to adjust my objects once they've been flowed along the surface. So if you don't need to worry about adjusting these objects, then the slop command works great. But if you have to place them and then start to take a look at how they interact with one another, I use record history with my flow along surface command in order to increase the size, decrease the size, move them around, and they will follow along that surface perfectly, so I don't have to worry about any kind of going back, going forward, going back, going forward kind of workflow.
Cool. Sabra mentioned, I don't know if you talked about this already, but digital caliper name?
The digital caliper name is Mitutoyo.
Okay, so let's do maybe another question or 2 more questions, and then we should just wrap things up. Let's see. Do you build? Jason wants to know. Do you build stone shapes yourself or use a plugin such as Rhino Gold?
I don't use a plugin. The stone shapes that I have were given to me as a gift. I do own Rhino Gold, and it is possible to get the stone shapes from Rhino Gold if you want to. I don't use it myself, although that's not to say that you shouldn't. But I build my stone shapes a lot, and I scale my stone shapes a lot as well. So if I am working and I get my GIA file that tells me that this stone has very specific characteristics and I need to create a seat for the stone and I need to make it really perfect, I'll go ahead and take one of the original stones that I have in my modeling tools file and I will scale it in multiple directions in order to make it exactly keyed into the stone that I'll be setting eventually.
Okay, one last question for the recording. This is from Joseph. How much RAM do you suggest is needed to not crush often?
Rhino suggests 8 gigs. That's the minimum. A lot of it has to do also with your graphics card, though. I mean, I have 32 gigs of RAM on my computer, and I haven't crashed yet in the way that I used to crash in V4 and V5, but occasionally my graphics card and Rhino don't like each other, and there'll be a little misunderstanding, and I'll have to go back and open up my file again. It's not perfect, but I think that with 8 or more gigs and a decent graphics card, you're on your way to having fewer crashes anyway.
Cool. Okay, so that pretty much sums up. I think if you guys want to hang out, and Maya is available to answer some of these questions to follow up. Otherwise, after the presentation, we'll put all these questions together and then put it as a blog post. I'll submit them to a format and forward it to Maya, and we'll see if we could share it on our blog as well. But Maya, I think I'll take over the screen sharing. I'll become presenter again.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to stay and answer additional questions if people have them in the chat. I can also look through and just see what is here.
Cool. Let's see. All right, let me know if you guys can see my screen here.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Cool. But we shouldn't be here on this slide. We should be in this one. All right. But yeah, on behalf of the team, I want to thank everybody. Maya, thank you for us doing this presentation once again in your arena/concert hall.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the questions are going to be formatted and forwarded to Maya. Feel free to contact her for more information about training, for more information on how to sharpen your skills for jewelry modeling with Rhino as well. But yes, today's episode is brought to you by Novedge.com. We are one of the largest online design software stores online. So if you guys are looking up to pick up a version, a new version or upgrade your Rhino 5 or to look at any other third-party plugins, feel free to contact our sales specialist, Bob Dare. His email address is bob@novedge.com. And like I said earlier, if you want more information from Maia, we want to contact her, learn more about the training that's available, head on over to www.designrhinonyc.com. It should be there. Yes, it is there. So it's yeah, definitely check that out. She is located in LA, but Maia, I think what other options do you have for training as well?
Well, I can do screen sharing, which I occasionally do with people. It's not the most ideal way to train, but if you have questions and you want to book an hour with me, we can definitely sit down from across the world and share a screen. Additionally, I'm really happy to answer basic questions, like if you have one thing going on that is not working properly for you and you'd like me to take a look at it, just send me an email.
Sounds cool. All right, and yes, like a lot of you guys are Rhino users or beginning or learning, I want to plug Novedge's online community, rhinojungle.novedge.com. We're also on Twitter @rhinojungle. If you guys want a newsletter, a weekly newsletter to the latest video tips, events, industry news, head on over there. And if you guys check out our Facebook page, like us, you'll find the latest updates for product promos, Rhino promos, and also the webinar questions and blog posts as well. So yeah, check it out. In our next upcoming webinar, we'll be having Nick Herc from Sundog Creative. He'll be talking about solid thinking involved and how he'll take a sketch and turn it into a production without ever, without keeping it within the software. So yeah, if you guys want to sign up for this, it's at novedge.com/webinar/96. If you guys have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can email me at kevin@novedge.com. I'm always looking at ways we can improve what we're doing as well. So yeah, check it out. The webinar will be recorded, is being recorded, and will be uploaded by today's end. So vimeo.com/novedge and also at YouTube as well. So, and on behalf of the team, Maia, do you have any last words before we sign off on this?
I don't have any last words, but if people want to stay, otherwise I'll answer the questions that came in, obviously, for the blog, and then people can email me privately. But if anyone wants to stay, go ahead and start sending me questions or letting me know that you'd like me to answer questions that you already have put into the question area.
Very cool, very cool. Yeah, so Maia is an organizer, so this recording will be finished. However, Maia will be hanging out, and you guys are welcome to interact with her live as well. Cool. All right, in that case, thank you. On behalf of Novedge, thank you for joining us. Have a good one.